La 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 la. Screen peeking. Bop bop bop.
Hey everyone, welcome to Screen Peeking, a weekly video game podcast. I'm Ziggy. This is Nick. This is also episode 27. Forgot to say that. But yeah, so this week we got a few things. A lot of sort of like industry stuff we're talking about today. Xbox and Bethesda had sort of a big roundtable where they talked about their future and exclusivity and stuff like that. And then we also want to talk about E3 and what that means, in a post-COVID sort of digital space,
hmm
and whether we like that, whether we think that should change, or that sort of thing. But first off, before any of that, Nick, how you been doing? What have you been playing?
I'm doing okay. Had a bit of a, be totally honest, I had a bit of a downtime a couple days ago. I actually was feeling
Uh,
really down in the dumps, but today's feeling really good. I don't know, nothing's changed, but I guess just mentally, just you have a bad day and you have a good day. Um,
mhm.
Other than that, though, I've just kind of playing some Bioshock Infinite, the Burial at Sea DLC. Kind of wanting to go back to
Ooh.
Rapture. Been listening to old music and like the stuff from Bioshock, and man, I won't sidetrack too much, but man, that whenever this new BioShock game comes out, I know it won't be in Rapture because that's just too much of a perfect game. Or like the first BioShock's too much of a perfect game for them to compare to. But I
Mhm.
would love to go back to Rapture. I want a game that I can, bring me back there. I want the underwater city. I'm sure they'll be fine. But anyways, I've been really wanting to do that, so I was like, I'm gonna play the DLC for Infinite and experience that, and I have been. And it's not been that fun, to be honest. It's just there's something missing. They got the set, but they don't have the game. I don't know. Then
Out
I've
of
been
curiosity, sort of
yeah
a sidetrack, but
yeah
where's your hype level for whatever the new Bioshock is? Because it's, like you said, probably not going to be Rapture. It's
hmm
basically a whole different dev team than
hmm
the Bioshock we know. Like Ken Levine isn't on it or anything.
yeah
So are
yeah.
you
Rational
just
isn't around.
excited to see? Yeah, are you excited to see like that name come back, or are you a little more like apprehensive towards it?
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, I'm definitely excited
Hmm.
just because of the title. Um, I think it really like comes down to what makes a Bioshock game, right? And I think a lot of people could
Hmm.
say different things, and especially depending on which one is your first one or your favorite one. Like for me, my favorite and my first Bioshock is the first Bioshock. But some people just
Hmm.
started with Infinite and they love Infinite. They love the city in the sky and they hate horror games. And so they would
Hmm.
hate Rapture, and I can understand that, but I don't relate at all. Because so yeah,
Hmm.
for me, like I was telling a friend actually the other day, like if I was to consider Rapture the city a character, that'd be my favorite character in video games, hands down. So like I love just being there in the city, listening to the sounds, looking at every little like piece of the floor tile or wall and design of every room, and just imagining what it was like to live there when it was like in its prime. And I find that kind of mystery and that kind of thing so fun to look at. So I'm not expecting a lot, but I'm hoping for just a game that can bring me a similar feeling of excitement and wonder to like. I guess for me, I just need this new Bioshock to have powers, have weapons, and have some morality. I don't think it needs to have issues and like or decisions that you have to solve that have some morally gray area that you don't know whether it's right or wrong, but it's you got to make a decision. There's benefits to both and negatives to both. I think that has to happen for me. Um, and it's just a good story. It's got to be a single player, good story, and first person powers, abilities, and there's got to be a city and there's got to be a lighthouse. So that's
Hmm.
just what all of them have to have. So I'm expecting it to be like an underground city. If I was to guess
Ooh,
at this point, they already did
that
in
could
the
be kind of
sky. They
neat.
did
Yeah.
underwater. I could see an underground city, using a lot of electricity for lights and interesting designs there,
Mhm.
and like people who've never seen the daylight and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
especially if they're going back to more of a horror feel to it. I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, and who knows, but I would like that. Um, I
Mhm.
just I feel like Bioshock One just did it horror in a good way. I don't think it wasn't just jump scares. It just was creepy to walk around the
Yeah.
city. You never knew when there would be a citizen walking around who was just just spliced right up and out of their damn
Mhm.
mind. Anyways,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. So I've been playing some Bioshock Burial at Sea, and then I played some Remnant from the Ashes on PS5. They had that on. I guess it's a
Ooh.
PS4 version that's free right now with PS Plus. So kind of jumped back into that. I have it on PC, but my friend wanted to play it on PlayStation, so that's been some fun times. And yeah, other than that, just trying to learn some Unreal Engine. Getting excited to learn into
Awesome.
that.
Yeah,
Only
yeah.
really
Tell
started
me
2 days ago, so an hour a day to
that's so
keep
cool.
the doctor away or whatever. Yeah, what have you
Awesome.
been up
Yeah.
to this week?
So I have been really excited to do this episode because if you looked at our document here, one of the games I've been playing, it's just question marks. I wanted to keep that one secret because I have a surprise for you.
Ooh,
I like sort
it's
of
Dark
started
Souls.
this week. So right after I finished Amori, you're close. I started playing Bloodborne.
Yes, that's the second
And
guess.
I gotta say, I think I'm into it. I think I clicked this time. But in a, I don't know. This might be a really weird take on this game. So I am in Old Yarnum right now, so I'm a decent
Oh,
chunk
okay,
in. It feels like I've been playing for a little bit. Um,
pretty close to the beginning.
and yeah, I mean not super
Yeah,
far in,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
like I've beat a few bosses. I'm not in like the prologue.
yeah.
But the thing that I wasn't expecting, but I am very pleasantly surprised by, is that this is like a weirdly good sort of podcast chill out game, if that makes any sense. In that like when I'm fighting bosses and like exploring a new area for the first time, definitely not. Like it does have that sort of like anxiety of what's
Right.
around that corner and all that. But usually what I do is in a section, I get a new lantern, and then I'm going through there until I reach a boss, and then once I see that boss, I usually get my ass handed to me, and I'm like, okay, cool, and then sort of go back and then grind for however long I feel like, and
Hmm.
sometimes that's literally like one podcast episode, so like around an hour. And I'll do that, and then once that's over, I'm like, all right, do I think I'm powerful enough? I'm like, yeah, I think I can do it, and then go
Yeah.
over couple tries, beat the boss, move on. And that's been like it's been enjoyable to me. Like it honestly has not been super stressful. I just recently got to her name is escaping me, but like the third sort of major boss of the game. Not the Bloodstarved Beast, but
Vicar Amelia.
the maybe she like the lady's like praying and then she's a big monster,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
That's
she
the one.
just
Yeah.
like destroyed me the first time I fought her. I'm like, all right, like I'm doing no damage to this lady, I'm gonna need to go do something else. And I knew that there was a couple like there's like Old Yarnum, which I found. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll go back to that later. And then another place, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go do those first, and then I should be a little bit more powerful.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I started going down there. But yeah, I mean, I'm not usually one for like grinding in games, but it definitely feels not necessary, but like helpful. Like
It's beneficial.
it
Yeah.
definitely encourages you to more than most games, I feel like. Which is it's an interesting loop for sure. I think another thing that I was surprised by, I guess, and maybe let down a little bit, is the combat in the game. I don't think it's like that great, to be honest. Or it's just simple, I guess, which is part of why I think it's a good like podcast game, but maybe not as good as other action games that I've played in terms of like being really engaging. Like even just fighting basic enemies gets boring after a little bit,
Hmm.
whereas compared to something like Devil May Cry, and I've been thinking about this in my head about like action games, and I kept on coming back to Devil May Cry, even though they are different games. Like stylistically, kind of feel like they also aren't, because Devil May Cry 5 is also a punishing, hard ass game, and I just recently beat it playing as Virgil, and I think that was actually beneficial to me in Bloodborne because Virgil's playstyle is actually really, really similar to Bloodborne, where it is like it's not at quite as defensive as something like Dark Souls, but it is still very much like you're walking around waiting for your opportunity, like letting them do their thing, and then coming in and striking, and then backing off again. Like it has that much more cautious approach, but um to me, I think what it comes down to is I feel like most combat encounters are kind of the same in how you do it, and that it is they attack you, dodge roll or parry, which by the way, the parry, like the with the gun, feels
Hmm.
so good. I
Doesn't
really,
it?
really like
They
that
just
mechanic.
really
It's
hit
it's a
that
really
thud.
creative use of yeah. Um and but like you do that, you either parry or dodge roll, do a couple attacks,
Hmm.
back off, dodge roll, whereas in most different enemy types are more just like different reach, or they have more health, or they're bigger, or they attack more. Like, it's less about you're fighting them fundamentally differently, and just you're like the intervals at which you attack and dodge are different. Whereas compared to something like Death May Cry, which I like, so many enemies you attack in just a fundamentally different way, where
Right.
really big enemies, they have really slow, devastating attacks that you need to watch out for. But other than that, you can really get a lot of hits in. Or others, they sort of like charge up and spin, and so if you can break them while they're spinning, like do the right certain kinds of attacks to like stun them, then you can get a good combo on them and then do like some heavy damage. Or others, it's more about range. Others, it's all about getting in the air. Some you need to get behind them. Like, they all have different strategies. Whereas I think that comes down to the fact that you just don't have that many options of what you can do in Bloodborne. It didn't feel like it had quite the same
So
depth to it.
if I could just interrupt for a second, just because I do want to actually say I obviously don't agree, but I also want to share why. I'm hearing what you're saying, and you've only encountered a couple of the enemy types in the game. There's a lot of different types of enemies. And I totally get that with your basic fodder, essentially your enemies that are gonna die in 1 or 2 hits. Yeah, they're mindless, but they are there just to like push your expectations at the beginning. Like, wait, this one attacks much faster. The dudes at the beginning, they have their machete or they have their fork. Yeah, the fork has a longer range. The machete, they still gonna come up and swing at you, and if you wait a second, then you can hit them. That's fine. But the one with the torch, he actually has a faster like startup attack, and he can get you if you're getting too close before you start your attack. You talking about like how it's doesn't really take a different approach for you're going to do the same attacks every time. Basically, you're going to be approaching the enemy the same way. I'd say like even think of like some of the enemies later on. I'm just using ones that I know you've encountered as an example right now. Like think of like the bigger wolves that are on all fours, right? Those ones, they just kind of sometimes they'll just keep coming at you, right? And you have to really be like thinking about how you want to handle it. Fire can affect enemies differently than other types of weapons, right? Or you can be using those guys with the bricks, the big dudes. Like you have to parry those, right? If you go up and you start slashing at them, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Or you need to have a different type of weapon and be using maybe an R2 attack that's going to stagger them versus. Because if you can get some big, heavy, strong weapons, that can stagger. And then if we just go to simply, which weapon did you start with, by the way? Your melee weapon.
I think I'm using the saw cleaver.
Nice. Okay, perfect. That was the one I was going to use as an example. That's my favorite one to start with. But like that one, you transform it. Like you have a transform attack, which is awesome, I think. And but your basic attack, you're just slicing back and forth over and over again. But then you do your R2, and it's just like a slightly wider sweep of the same attack. But then you go to transform it, and your R1 is like a vertical slice, and you're getting some really high reach where you can actually start to hit like the head of like certain bosses, which is like their crit spot, and they can get knocked down, and then you can get a visceral attack on them. Or you have then you use your R2 on that one. It's a big wide sweep. And I think depending on the situation, there are times where you have a lot of weak enemies, but they're surrounding you, and you want to be able to, okay, in that moment, swap to your longer version, swing your weapon really wide, then transform it again, and so then you're able to get a bunch of quick slices in nice and close, and then roll out of the way or something like that. I think that there is a lot of opportunity, but I think at the beginning of the game, but definitely later on as it gets more challenging.
I can see that, yeah.
To be able to
part of it. Yeah. For what I'm saying is, like, I definitely I have not seen all the enemies, so I shouldn't necessarily critique the enemy depth of what there is. Because and I'm starting like in Old Yarnum, seeing some guys that are kind of pushing me on my toes a little bit. But I think part of what does it is in something like Devil May Cry that I think has a really, really deep combat system. Just like the basic shitty guy. You can defeat him in about a million different ways. Like there are so many different approaches.
Right, different type of game though.
To take out. Yeah, but they're both action games, and I feel like part of what makes a good action game in my eyes is allowing you to tackle the game I don't know necessarily how to describe it. Like I do agree, totally different games, but I think in their core, like purely combat design principles, I actually think they're fairly similar. in terms of but
Hmm.
anyways, moving on from that, another thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that there's a lot of discussion, especially in last year, in terms of like, should there be an easy mode in Souls games? And I mean, obviously didn't really have an opinion on that because that wasn't something I was versed in, but after playing this, my takeaway is they already have an easy mode. Like, these games have a really, really dynamic difficulty scaling that is just by playing the game more, you level up and the game gets easier. Like, it's exactly what I was saying before of,
And not
I
even
get
from
my ass handed to me. It's not about like, oh, this is really difficult, I need to try again and again until I'm better. I can just kind of go, oh, I'll grind a bit and then it'll be easier.
Mhm.
And then I like the cleric beast, I got my ass handed to me that first time. And I was like, oh, that's hard. And then I ended up way over grinding myself to the point where I think I was like level 20 by the time I beat him. I spent like way too much time just killing basic
Sure, and
enemies.
you can do that, but
Um,
like the difficulty
yeah,
can also
and
change
so I
just
beat
whether you
him,
know an
like,
enemy very well, right? Like you
mhm,
run up to that guy and he
mhm.
backhands you, and then you run up and he backhands you, and you run up and he backhands you. You're gonna go like, okay, he's gonna backhand me. Now I know how to deal with this guy, right?
Yeah, but I really like that, the way that the game can be as difficult or hard as you want. It just like starts at the highest difficulty and then lets you scale it down to where you think it should be depending on
Mhm.
how much time you invest. And I think that's really, really smart. It's almost like not totally dissimilar to something like what they have in Hades, where with like their God mode thing, where every time you run, every time you die in a run, you like get a little bit more health, you know, you do a little bit more
Mm.
damage. So every time you're dying, the game gets slightly easier. So it starts hard and then gets down to a point that's manageable for you. And I think this has a pretty damn similar style to it.
Except dying's bad.
And it's also, yeah,
For
well,
progress at least.
yeah, but I actually want to touch on that as well because I, in something like Sekiro, dying felt more weighty than it did here because yes, you lose all your blood points, but to me it almost felt, I had a similar mindset to when I was playing Outer Wilds actually, where death at some point I just kind of stopped caring because I knew like that's a good chunk of progress. Like in Outer Wilds, you know, it could have taken me 10 minutes to get to where I was on this certain planet after doing all these certain configurations, but like I can just do that again and it's fine. And with this here, like I might have all this banked up, but as long as I'm careful, like I might lose, you know, 4,000 blood bucks. I forget what it's called, like blood essence or
I think it is
whatever.
blood bucks.
I like blood bucks. That's what I was saying in my head while I was playing it. Um, and but like, and even if I do fully lose that, even if I don't manage to recover that, like, that's another 10-20 minutes of grinding to get that. If that, like, you recover stuff back pretty damn quickly.
Mhm.
And items that really, really matter, you know, like your consumables and stuff like that, you don't lose when you die. So to me, dying definitely didn't feel as consequential. Whereas in Sekiro, like dying over and over again, you're consistently losing all the money and stuff that you've earned up, and that felt a little more like gut wrenching to me than it did in something like Bloodborne. Um, but yeah, and those things are honestly pretty unpleasantly surprising to me. Like this game is not as brutal as I was expecting, and also not quite as
Oh,
like scary, which is good too. I think because I don't know if I was necessarily looking for like a straight horror game right now. I don't really know if I'd call it a horror game. It's definitely spooky, but and like creepy and
yeah.
eerie and all that. But I don't think anything in it has actually like
No, it's not.
scared me yet.
No,
Yeah,
nothing will scare
yeah,
you. If nothing scared you
yeah,
yet, nothing will scare you in this game.
yeah.
It's not terrifying.
Um, mhm. But yeah, I definitely am enjoying it.
That's
We'll
awesome to
see
hear.
if I finish it.
Yeah.
I don't have a great track record of finishing games in general, but where I'm standing now, oops, I currently plan on finishing it. So yeah.
Nice.
Um. Anyways, talked for a long time about that.
I'm okay with that.
Another game I'm playing is Dusk. I know I'm sure you wouldn't care. I've been playing Dusk, which I for some reason have not played that before, but it's, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Nick. It's sort of similar to like what Shovel Knight is to like retro revival 2D platformers,
Okay.
where it sort of started the wave of um, retro revival first person shooters, which you know that I love. Um, and I mean it's good. I definitely don't think it's as good from what I've played as some other games of that ilk that came out after it, like Ultra Kill, for example. And I think part of that is because it feels maybe a little bit too true to the classics. Like, it is very, very, very Doom, even in all its menus and
Oh,
stuff.
nice.
Which which I love, and it's it's that nostalgia to it. But I do think that I personally respect something like Ultra Kill's attempt to take what made those old games great and make it modern and make it new and make it inventive. I think I personally like that a little bit more, but I still like respect the hell out of what this game does. It's super fun. And then finally, I finished Omori, which I've talked about 2 episodes now briefly. But so you remember when we did our Game of the Year show, and I said, like, Half-Life Alyx is my Game of the Year, and I said something about pretty much no matter what comes out, Half-Life Alyx would be my Game of the Year because it's a Half-Life game. And I pretty firmly believe if I finish this game, like, before we did that episode, because it came out on Christmas Day 2020, it would have been my Game of the Year, I think.
Ooh.
Because this game is so special. Like, the last
How
third
special
of this
is
game, like, the last third of this game was not what I was expecting at all to happen. Like, it's sort of, it's one of those, like, it's a 2D RPG, very indie, though higher production value than most games of its ilk. But cutesy with some horror elements, a darker side to it and all that. But I was kind of expecting it to just kind of go the, like, nihilistic, like, oh, things sure do suck, don't they? People suck. But it really isn't. Like, it ended and I felt great. Like, it ended and I'm like, that's a really sad story, but it's really, really hopeful and just, like, beautiful, really. Like, it's just a really, really beautiful game. And I want to also, same thing, I've been thinking about the game nonstop for like a week now. And I very, very, very rarely say this about RPG Maker games, but I think it's something that everybody should go out and play. It's currently sitting in my top 5 games of all time. I said last week that so that's really inconsistent, so we'll see if it stays there. But so far, I've only been liking it more the more that I think about it. I just, like, I don't think that there's anything I don't like about this game. Like, it is so, so good. The music is good. The
such a good
combat is
feeling.
awesome. Yeah, like, especially for, RPG Maker games are kind of infamous for, like, neat ideas and cool concepts, sometimes a good story, but usually kind of cringy and not fun to play in the slightest. And this game avoids all of that. Like, it is really, really fun, especially if you're into more like Persona type battle systems where it's about, like, exploiting enemies, or, like, not just exploiting your enemies' weaknesses, but giving them weaknesses to exploit, which I think makes for some really fun tactics. And yeah, and also, like, if you're into Earthbound, you'd love this. It's that same, like, for kids and adventure and doing all that. Though definitely separates itself from Earthbound quite a bit. But yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit and just give it the most glowing Ziggy recommendation possible. Because if you're into RPGs and if you're into stories, like, seriously, give this a shot.
Where can people get it?
Where'd you get it? On Steam.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on Steam. I think it's just on PC right now, but a Switch port has been announced. It doesn't have a date yet, so I would say, like, if you are hesitant now, wait for the Switch port, because then it's anywhere that you go and will probably be a little more polished and stuff like that. But yeah, it just I cannot say enough good things about this game. Seriously, go out and play it. And then also I played Cricket 19, our Game Club game.
Oh yeah, I played that too.
Segue into Game Club. Yeah, so why do you start us off? What did you think of Cricket 2019?
So I played like 15 minutes of this. I couldn't play any longer. And 10 minutes of it was the character creator. I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, first of all, you and me, we both didn't know anything about Cricket, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that's why we wanted to play this, because we're like, ha, cricket, what is this thing? What is this sport? So I thought it would be funnier than I expected, and it was still funny, but I went into this career mode or whatever, and I didn't understand half the stuff it was asking me to do until it was like, hey, make a character. And I said, okay, I've done that before. So here we go. Started making a character, and I don't have my character on here, but I have yours that you sent me. So maybe I'll pop that up in a second here. But basically, I made this monster of a character, made him look like this like alien, and yeah, he was just like was the weirdest guy, biggest eyes as far apart as they could go. Head was very narrow at the bottom, pointy chin, and bulbous head, and made his neck as long as it could go, really thick, and then and then made him as tall as possible. So yeah, that was really fun. That part was great. I liked that. And it was kind of gross when you start to like move so for example, in like the front of your head, as you start to adjust it, I was like moving it back and forth, and it looked like the forehead was kind of pulsing, and did you do the same thing? No, but
Yeah.
I was like, this is odd looking, but it kind of I'm having a good time. I'm kind of into this. So it was making a fun character, and then started the game, and I guess we started a match. Don't know about any of the rules on this thing. Watched a CPU character just hitting the ball, and I was like, okay, cool, and it said press X to skip, so I pressed X, and then all of a sudden I was ready to hit the ball, and I apparently hit the ball really good at one point, and then I did terrible the next one, and terrible the next one, and then it just kept having me hit this ball, and I was like, what is this it? I don't know. And was basically like, okay, I think I've gotten enough of this. I'm out, and I turned it off. So for me, I have really no idea whether this is a good game or not, but I liked the character creator in it. So that was my opinion. Zig, why don't you say your opinion while I switch over to your character here?
Yeah, I think this is an awesome character creator, man. I could not tell you anything about the actual video
There you
game
go.
though, because I tried this with all of my controllers, trying to connect them to my computer, and for whatever reason, only this game, every time I press a button, it disconnects from my computer. So
Weird.
And when you're actually playing cricket, you need a controller. And so I tried to get into a match with Unch Punchum, which is the name of my guy here. And unfortunately, I could not. But yeah, here he is. Here's my beautiful baby.
Oh,
But yeah, I
jeez.
spent like 20 minutes just like going through all of here. It is robust.
It's really
I have such
impressive.
a deep love for character creators that let you like make things that are bad,
Mhm.
because so many just don't give you enough options, I feel like. But like, let me put those eyes in just the wrong spot. Like, let me give some really horrible facial features.
There's
like,
a reason we
don't
aren't God.
restrict me, don't tie me down. Exactly. And this game lets me do that, and I love it.
Mhm.
There's like I mean, on like the face option, there's like 20 things, and half those names I don't even know what that is. Like weird
Yeah.
scientific names for like certain muscles in your cheeks.
Yeah,
Shit.
totally.
Like someone did an autopsy on a human and made this character creator based off of it. But so that is extremely robust. The cricket, who knows? If you're into cricket, maybe you should try it out and let us know. But yeah, this is a best character creator I've used in a while. So 2 thumbs up
Yeah.
on that. And for me, I had a blast.
Yeah, by Ziggy's skill. Yeah, 2 thumbs up on that character creator. And I have no thumbs
also,
to give on the gameplay of the game.
even outside of the character creator, all the character models in this game just like rig me out. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
they're
Like,
odd. They look
there's
dead
like your
inside.
coach guy, and he's like giving you tips, and it's just gross. I do not like it.
Yeah, it's like looking at a creepy doll.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of gave me that same feeling.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, do you have anything more to say?
Nothing
on
else.
it?
No. It was
Yeah.
just it was a mistake and a good time for 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah. All right. So, now on to the news.
Ooh.
Today, so yeah, like I said, Bethesda, Xbox, they had a bit of a roundtable talking about their future.
Yeah, because like the
lot
deal
of
is
it-
official now, right? The
Yeah, so they are officially merged, which, thoughts on that. But
Family.
from this roundtable, so I pulled out some quotes that I thought were important. So Phil Spencer was addressing exclusivity. He said something like,
The big one.
everyone's like, obviously it's on everyone's mind, so I'm gonna say it. And he said, quote, "So obviously I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is exclusive because we know that isn't true." Um, and he talked about, like, previous contractual obligations and the fact that some stuff is already on other platforms. So I think he's talking about, stuff like Deathloop and or stuff like Fallout 76, which, is a service game that they're still supporting, but it's on PlayStation, not just gonna go, sorry, no more content for you.
I have something just to, because I don't want this thought to go away and me not to mention this, but like when he was talking there, this is the one part that I was able to watch before I got here, so I'm excited. You'll get to say pretty much everything else. But I remember he was also saying, like, and there could be like deals, like contractual deals also in the future, not just the ones that have been like, we know of Deathloop. And that made me think of Indiana Jones. Anyways, I just wanted to say that because that could be the one that's coming up in the future, and then everything else could be. But anyways, sorry to interrupt.
But then he said, if you're an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is that this is about delivering great exclusive games for you that ship on platforms where Game Pass exists. And then literally said, that's the root of this partnership we're building. So to me, that sounds like everything is going to be exclusive unless it isn't. But people are talking about, like, oh, will Starfield will be exclusive? I think this says, yeah, it will be. Will things like, the Elder Scrolls 6? Yes. I think just with the rare exceptions in the future and the current games that we know now are obviously not going to be exclusive, like Deathloop and Ghostwire. I think they are wanting to focus on putting things, like he said, where Game Pass exists. So Xbox, PC, and plus phones, smart TVs, and all that stuff. I think they even said somewhere else in there too about how they want these games to be. I think it was Todd Howard saying something about how he wants these games to be on every smart screen, I think was how he said it. So whether that's your TV or your Samsung smart,
you don't want them all to follow Skyrim, be on your Alexa and everything. No.
No, that was the most Todd Howard thing. But yeah, I think that it's nice to hear solid, like, this is what you're getting, set expectations straight. I think if I did not have an Xbox or a PC, I would be fairly upset about this. And it does kind of suck for those people, but it's definitely good for the Xbox brand and building up their library of exclusives. But for me, even though I am definitely, like, Xbox is my main platform, there is still a little bit of heaviness in my heart to hear that, like, all the games, or not all, not like 95% of games from this publisher are just going to be on one platform. And granted, that platform is really expansive at this point, and if you do only have a PS4 or PS5 or something, there is still a way to access these games. But and I think that's kind of the silver lining, but it's not necessarily disappointing because this is kind of what I assumed would happen and was kind of, readying myself for this. And it is good for what, Phil and the team is trying to build, but sad for those who aren't in that ecosystem, I think.
Yeah, so it's I guess a bummer to people who refuse to move over or to do something else. I don't know how many people, I know there's people that don't have a computer, that's understandable, but like how many people don't have an Xbox computer and not a phone, and then eventually, if they are looking to the future, a TV as well, or just one of those devices. I think it will be harder to not be able to access Game Pass than it is to access it. I don't know. I think once they get it on TVs, once they get onto all browsers, that's when it's game over, right? Like, they don't need to worry about people, whether they can, they will. And just doing, like, obviously very rough, like, it just went, was looking at, like, if you were thinking about it right now, nothing changes, right? Like, not much changes. All these games are still available on, like, PlayStation. Like, all these games that are going to Game Pass, it's cool, they're on Game Pass now. So if you want to have that whole collection of games and just pay for a month, then you can do that. But let's say you wanted to get an Xbox Series S and you want to save about $450. I was like, okay, 450, and like let's say you want to save over 2 years, right? Because maybe in 2 years that's when games start coming out, right? Or a lot of them. Maybe Starfield is the exception. Maybe that comes out next year or whatever. But let's say you're looking at just under $19 a month you need to save for 2 years, and you might not be the kind of person that wants to plan that far ahead or save that kind of thing, but that's honestly a smart way to do it if you're really concerned about how you want to play on a console and you're not so worried about, and maybe just a little bit longer. I'm just saying, like, $19 a month, that's not crazy. It's not that impossible. I mean, anyways, that's just I just wanted to say that because it's like, really, you can plan ahead for these kind of things, and it hasn't been this announcement that they were very likely, and it was almost it was almost guaranteed that they were going to be buying Bethesda. Like, the deal was started back in when September. Like, you have lead time here, these things are going to happen. And I think it will suck if you're refused to move and you're like, I'm only playing on PlayStation, but you could literally play on anything else and you can access these games. So I don't feel bad for those people. I more feel bad if they're not willing to like look into other options. I mean, no one's playing, like, if you're playing on your PlayStation 5 or you're playing on a PC, you're probably not playing your PlayStation 2 that much, and if you are, you're blowing off the dust and you're pulling out for a day or two. You're going to buy a new console eventually if you like games that much, and if you don't like games that much, you'll play them on your phone. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think for a lot of people, spending $300 on a console to play games from like one publisher is maybe like, I think a lot of people just don't care enough to do that. But and also, like, xCloud hopefully is better in the future, but right now I would definitely not choose to only play a game on xCloud, and especially if not like Wolfenstein or
No,
Doom
yeah,
or
not
something like
Wolfenstein,
that.
but Fallout and Skyrim,
like,
you totally could.
Yeah, maybe Fallout, but like all that does still fall under the Bethesda umbrella. But I mean, hopefully in the future it is that way, where it is a very on par experience to playing it natively. But currently it isn't, and I definitely, the same reason why I don't blame people for not getting into VR, because it's $300 for a headset, and there's only really a handful of like amazing games to play, and that's a lot of people. That's just not worth it. It is to me, because I like, this is a very big hobby of mine. It's where most of my money goes, and I'm okay saving up for something like that. Like, there's a reason why I own all the major consoles. But for a lot of people, like, it isn't necessarily about they can't. It's just like, is it really worth it? And yeah, but
yeah, that's where I'm just saying the people who really want it will do it, and the people who don't won't, and that's okay.
But I also, like, I am definitely worried about consolidation of the video game industry, but I think less from Microsoft's side and more from like THQ Nordic or whatever they call it now, I forget. Embracer Group, of them, like, they own Tarsier, the studio that makes Little Nightmares, and Tarsier is now no longer making Little Nightmares. It's getting shoved off some other studio, despite the fact that that series isn't finished. Like, there is still more to see from that, and that makes me really sad. Like, because they were an indie studio, but now they're owned by Embracer Group, who owns a million studios, and have kind of gotten sucked into that vortex, and that makes me sad. Like, Microsoft, from what we've seen currently under Phil Spencer's lead, has been very open with their studios in terms of just like, hey, you guys get our funding, our marketing, and all that thing, and you guys just keep doing what you're doing, make what you want to make. And that's great, awesome, thumbs up to Microsoft. But for other companies, it's not that way. And that makes me a little sad. But I'm glad someone like Bethesda got picked up by Microsoft, and not, like I said, by Embracer Group or Tencent or something like that. Those other big sort of conglomerates. But yeah, outside of that, they also said there's a ton more games coming to Game Pass from Bethesda. So I think some notable ones, I saw Dishonored 1 is coming, a bunch of old Doom games. So like,
I have
1,
the list here
2,
if you want.
3.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that list that they said is a collection of of games that were on Game Pass and games that are coming.
Yes.
Yeah. just like their 20 so games that are on there right now. Yeah, you can read that if you want.
Sure, yeah. So they say all the games that arrive tomorrow, March 12th, and they're just saying a handful of the titles will also benefit from the FPS boost on Xbox Series X and S, with more details on that front to be revealed soon. So like probably not right away, but that's coming soon. So the games that are coming is Dishonored Definitive Edition. All of these, actually, I'm just taking a quick glance. Unless it's not the case, I'll clarify if it's not the case, but most of these are to console, PC, and to the cloud, which means you can stream it to your phone, just so you know. So Dishonored Definitive Edition, Dishonored 2, Doom 1993, Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom 64, Doom Eternal, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, which is only on console and PC, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, console and PC, Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, special edition version, on all of this stuff, console, PC, cloud. Elder Scrolls Online, just cloud and console, no PC. The Evil Within, console, PC, cloud. Fallout 4, console, PC, cloud, etc. It's Fallout 76, Fallout New Vegas, Prey, Rage 2, Wolfenstein: The New Order, Wolfenstein: Old Blood, Wolfenstein: Young Blood. The Old Blood.
What that
Think of
list,
Bloodborne.
that's kind of odd to me. Is there is some like kind of weird glaring exceptions, like why isn't Doom 2016 here? Why isn't The Evil Within 2 here? Like games that aren't new but are, I feel like, should be in here, or Wolfenstein 2, where that's sort of odd. I hope those are coming later, especially since Doom 2016 was in Game Pass but isn't for some reason now. But yeah, FPS boost. I'm excited to see what gets that as well, because I haven't messed around with it just because the games that they're talking about I didn't really feel like going back to, or the games that they previously announced to have it. But yeah, I mean, if like the old Doom games, I can run those in like 120 FPS on my Series X.
That'd be neat.
That'd be awesome. I'd super dig that. Yeah. Or just stuff like that. I'm excited to see what they do. And then, yeah, the final thing they said is that they have more announcements on, I think they said it's their bigger games like Starfield and such this summer. So excited for that. And unless you have anything else to say, that's sort of a good segue into our next topic, which is what's happening this summer. Because E3 has been... did they officially announce it's a digital thing?
Yeah, they've said it is going to be a digital event. I don't remember if they've clarified the dates. I want to say it's like some, obviously mid June at some point. But yeah, no, I think they've clarified it's a digital event.
We have a digital E3, and we have Summer Game Fest with Jeff Keighley and IGN and like GameSpot and all these stuff kind of did their own thing over last summer.
Jeff Grubb's game mess.
yeah. And so we have some discussion topics here. So do we like the way that this is happening, or do we prefer that sort of like 1 week just everything comes out? What do we think E3 is going to look like this year? Do we need E3? Like, is that something that it needs? How does that stand out from just like the regular slew of press conferences and events that are happening anyway? So yeah, let's start off fairly simple. So what do we think E3 is going to look like in a digital format this year?
I think that's an interesting question, really, because I think it needs to be different. What will it be though? I think it'll be a letdown. I don't think it'll be as great as E3 once was. I think we're past that now. I think a lot of people are past that. Yeah. They know it's basically on its last legs, and they're just struggling to make something interesting. So
it's kind of been on its last legs, to be honest. Like
yeah,
COVID, I feel
100% last year, right? It was, and I honestly, I guess I'm not surprised, but I was like, oh yeah, I guess they're still going to try to do something. It's kind of last thing on my mind was what's happening for E3. I was just like, I wonder what announcements are happening this summer. I wasn't thinking about E3 already, right? And I've only missed one. So, what's going to happen next year when we'll see what happens with this one, but I guess what are they gonna do? I think it'll be more of the same, just digital. They need to have a way for people to feel a part of it. That was like a big draw for like why I originally had wanted to go back in the day, back in the day 2 years ago. And I wanted to go just because I wanted to be around a lot of people that were excited about the same kind of thing, and excited about the industry, and wanting to see these announcements live. There's just something special about that, and just being able to go on a trip and do that kind of thing. I've really wanted to be a part of it in some way or another, and not really being able to now is kind of like, I wish I was like more on top of things years ago. But that being said, I feel like they got to find a way to do it digitally. Jeff Keighley with the Game Awards, and they had their like a bunch of different. They worked with Steam or something like that, I think, if I remember right, to like have all these demos available. I think something to do with cloud gaming and having ways for people to play demos or be able to like. They'll probably monetize it in some way. So I'm not fond of this idea, but just putting it out there, like what if they made you pay for some ticket to be able to access this behind closed doors showing of this thing, and then you get to play the demo that you just watched, or things like that. I feel like they need to do something like that to make it unique and special and different, but I don't know what they will do. What about you? What are you thinking?
So the first thing I'm thinking with E3 this year is I similarly think it's going to be disappointing, and I think a lot of that is because we've already seen major companies moving away from E3 even before COVID was a thought in our minds. In like 2018, Sony and Microsoft aren't a part of E3. They just have press conferences around it. And I think if they're having to pay, like, I remember hearing it's like well into six figures to have like with what kind of seems like an E3 logo slapped onto the press conference already doing. I don't see many companies like jumping to get on that. Like, I think the big ones, your Ubisoft, your Square, your Microsoft, your Sony are just gonna do it when they feel like it in the summer. Especially and as far as what E3 will look like, I think that'll be interesting because one of the big draws for E3 outside of the major publisher press conferences was the show floor. It was like the networking, like talking, like you said, seeing people who had previous or similar interests as you, but also was seeing different booths, different devs. Like there's a lot of indie shit there where they can just show off their game to whoever walks by. And I think what you said, I really hope they do something like what Jeff Keighley did with the sort of Steam demo thing, because I love that, like seeing these games coming out, getting to actually get my hands on them and play them was super smart. And even without COVID, I've been wishing that people would do that for a little bit, because I want to play those demos. I want to have my own opinions on them without having to go in person. So I really hope there is something like that, and hopefully it isn't just locked to PC as well. I hope that people on consoles have some way to enjoy that as well. And like you said, streaming makes that a lot easier when you instead of having to actually download it and all the security risks that come with that in terms of data mining and stuff like that. You can just stream from the cloud, and it's a little easier for the devs. A little easier to get that where you want it in all the most secure ways. So I do hope that's a big part of it. And I want to see what sort of like digital show floor they have, whether that just means like their website, scrolling through and seeing booths on there, like of different developers with their demos and games and trailers that you can all stream from there. I think something like that would be kind of cool. But I mean, overall, I do think the big boys in the industry aren't really going to give a shit if this is happening or not, because
they'll be Ubisoft will do their Ubisoft forward.
They're not going to want to pay that kind of money just to do what they can already do themselves, know. And obviously, I'm not a big CEO. Maybe it is worth it. Maybe that the six figures they pay for that gets them millions of sales in terms of marketing. But given how last year went for them, I don't like. Now that so many of these big publishers do have their own very established and successful, Ubisoft forwards, and I think it's blanking on me, but other publishers have similar things that they just started up last year. I don't see them latching on to that idea quite as much. And so another thing is, do you want that 1 week E3, massive hype everywhere, or do you like having it spread over a month or the whole summer, or as seeming now, like whole several seasons, given that we're kind of already jumping into it in spring?
Yeah. I actually like how it was last year. I mean, I I wouldn't say I was excited every week or anything like that, but it was fun getting that there's some somebody's doing their little stream here and someone else is doing their stream there and the next week and a few days later, and there was always something to talk about. And for myself, I just passed like a year of being consistent with YouTube and trying to actually make something of this channel, and kind of looking back on it, I was like, man, there was a lot of reaction videos I got to do over that summer, and that was a lot of fun to me. I had regardless of views or anything like that, I went back and I watched a few of those recently, and I was like, man, you can just see I was having a good time. I sucked at what I was doing at the time, but I was having a good time with it and enjoying what I was watching and just reacting to it, and I found that a lot of fun. And it wasn't all just I need a week off of work so I can cover everything I want to cover. So I mean, for me, as someone who I like many people have responsibilities, and I want to have a good work-life balance, and I want to do stuff I enjoy but still have balance with responsibilities. I like having a few months of just every week there's a couple things to look forward to. And what about you?
Yeah, so I would agree. I do think I like the more spread out nature because it allows stuff that I wouldn't usually really give a shit about to actually give a shit about. Like something like a Ubisoft Forward. I would never care because I don't really play Ubisoft games for the most part. Like that's not really my thing. But I I watched the Ubisoft Forwards last year anyway, just because it was something to watch.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that's great on the publisher side. And also, I mean, it's just kind of fun. Like seeing something like Far Cry 6 come out in one of those, which Far Cry, not a franchise I have a ton of love for, but I liked Far Cry 4. I've dabbled and I enjoy it. And it's like, oh, cool. Just seeing what's next, getting, that little bit of excitement just sort of goes throughout, I think is, I think is better. But that said, I do think I'm gonna miss that sort of Christmas morning feeling to the week of E3 where it's just balls to the walls every hour. There's something insane happening. Yeah. There's just that anticipation and excitement over the whole thing. But I do think the new way is quote unquote better.
I think it's better for the publishers and developers as well, too, right? Because they all get their own little slice of the pie, and not everyone's fighting for the time. For all these people, say it was Sunday and Nintendo was showing stuff at 9, and then there's all these other people going with their little trailers, and they're talking about their stuff throughout the whole day until 6 p.m. What are they expecting me to watch from 9 till 6? I will, but I don't know if everyone will, right? And you gotta you're crossing your fingers that enough people are checking out your game. I don't know. I think it's definitely a lot better to do it this way, with where it's all spread out.
Yeah, and it also allows the Devolver Showcase, which that's an indie publisher that doesn't get that many eyes usually, or even the PC Gamer Show, which I've never watched before last year because I simply do not care. There's just too much happening for me to care about stuff like that. But when it's spread out, I totally do, and I can get excited about it. And there's also, I like having little Christmas mornings spread out throughout the summer. Where I remember I actually had Twitter downloaded on my phone last summer. And there would be days where I wake up, check Twitter, and then it's oh, holy shit, Near Replicant version whatever got announced. This is finally getting a remaster, and then be super excited about that, or waking up and being whoa, Unreal Engine 5, this looks awesome. Getting little giblets here and there, I think was cool, instead of having it all just compressed. And it's constant. It's a longer lasting, lower amount of hype, I think, which is preferable. It's less tiring at least. But yeah. And so the final thing, I'm sorry, I'm kind of speeding along because we're getting towards the end of the show here. But the final thing I want to talk about is how do they stand out from the rest? How do they make themselves different from Summer Game Fest, or different from just publishers doing stuff on their own?
Well, I guess I was kind of touching on that on the first question there. I guess they just need to make it so that you and I can go into VR and we can hold hands and walk through the event together. Just wow, we're here. No,
actually, okay, I want to stop you there because you say that, but I the weird thing that Devolver did last year where they had their like digital expo thing where you like downloaded a game on Steam that was this like rundown like E3 style show floor where you went to these like virtual booths for
I
all
did
the
not see
games
that.
that were coming out. You didn't? Because that
No.
was awesome. I loved that.
It sounds great.
And if they could, I don't know how E3 would organize that as something that big, but if they could somehow do that, like a virtual show floor where I can walk around and see these,
Billions
like,
of people
beautiful digital
teleporting
booths.
all over the place. That's what you'd see.
But even if it was just like a single player thing, you know, like I think at least I hope Devolver does that again this year. And now that is a very like Devolver thing to do.
It would
It's
be, yeah.
weird and experimental, but
Okay, so
yeah, I like that.
To something I just thought of now that might be kind of neat. Yeah, what is it? I was just thinking of something else from, again, Game Awards. I think Jeff Keighley's killing it with his with the stuff he's doing. But like, remember I don't think it was the last Game Awards. I think it was the one before. Might have been 2019. But there was the Apex Legends like skit where they had the mocap and it was like Mirage and he was chatting. Do you remember that? Was that last?
Yeah.
Was that just last in 2020? I think it was the 2019. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
That was weird, but also kind of, it could be neat to have something like that with characters from games and be able to have them interact. And like, you know, there's an actor and there's people talking off script and stuff like that. And I think something to that effect, I'm not the person making this thing, so I don't know, but I think something to that effect would be kind of cool and make it interesting and different, and a talking piece with, if oh, did you miss that? There was this thing, and there's always cringe with E3, so I mean, you got to have something in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna miss the cringe compilations for sure. Those will always rest apart. Now that everything's pre-recorded, it's just not the same.
No.
But yeah.
Speaking of which, did you see have you watched the I haven't seen it in forever, but there's like clips of when they first showed the Kinect and the Kinect Adventure and the Kinect games and stuff. If you haven't recently or ever, you need to go back and watch when they announced that stuff, because man, I forgot. I loved the Kinect when it came out, but I forgot how poor that showing was. It is full of awkward silences, and there's even like people like acting like they're acting out in front of a screen. They're like showing their motion for swinging the lightsaber around, but the character on the screen is completely off and not doing the same thing. So they're obviously pretending like they're moving the character on the screen, but they're not. And things like that are just, it's great. Well, you gotta watch it if you haven't watched it.
The
watch
Wii
it.
presentation was pretty awesome too. Like when
Yeah.
they announced the Wii with like the Wii music and all that. It was, yeah, good moments forever in my heart. Sadly, we'll probably never see stuff like that again. At least not in a big way. But yeah, so moving on from there into the final segment of our show, which is our favorite 50 games of all time, and now we're on number 43.
Woo.
You want to start us off?
Sure. My number 43 game is Castle Crashers. I adore this game, and to use a word from my brother's vocabulary, it was a delight. I really love Castle Crashers. I haven't played it in a long time, but I have the best memories of it. Just playing with my brother Jesse and the occasional friend as well. Just be able to unlock the different knights and different characters. You can unlock even some of the enemies to play as, which was like, you know, back when you have it was Xbox arcade game, and I played on the 360, and I remember just like those kind of games when you can unlock an enemy to play as, it's just something special about that. You're like, I'm the bad guy. Cool.
Yeah.
And I still got magic powers, and different characters had different powers. So you have ice, ice, poison, you know, fire. Then you have like, instead of one of the elements, you just get arrows flying into enemies, or I don't know. It was just like such a fun type of I don't know, would you call it a beat 'em up game? Like it's a, like, I don't know what you'd call it. It is a fun game though, and just the fact that you had like very light RPG elements to it, where you can like level up your magic power or your strength or your speed or your archery, and you kind of just had different abilities. You have your boomerang, you have a bow and arrow, and you have your sword or whatever melee weapon you're using. Just a fun game. Set amount of levels, go through, do your thing, have a good time with it, play with your friends up to 4 people, and play as like whatever character you want, level up that character. Once you max them out, play as a different character or hop in between. I don't know. I thought this game, like, it gave me countless hours of fun, and it was it's relatively cheap, and like you can get it now for like nothing on Steam for sure. But yeah, if you haven't played Castle Crashers and you just want a fun like smaller arcade game that is goofy and cute with like the artwork and just a delight, a fun time to play, like pick it up, give it a try, play it with a friend, play it online. It's a fun time.
Awesome.
What's yours?
So my number 43, talking on the subject of very good action games from earlier, is Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which
Ooh.
is
I haven't played that
awesome. It is like awesome is the word I use to describe it. It's just like it's such a like middle school, early 2000s style of like what's cool.
one. Yeah.
Like katanas are cool.
I've seen
right?
lots
like,
about
robots
this
are
one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fucking death metal is cool, right? And it's just like so over the top and dumb. Like in the traditional Metal Gear sense of like these stories that make you think and all this stuff, it's not that. It's just like a really badass action game. And like if you can just sort of turn your brain off and try not to think too hard about it, it's like there's so much fun to be had in here. And aside, like also combat system, amazing in this game. It is so fun to move around. I have a lot of love for games that make my voice is doing something that make their mechanics that would usually be a button press in other games, they make a little more complicated. So like Bloodborne with its gun parry system, even though that is a button press, but like it's not what you expect. So like in Metal Gear, you don't have a dodge button. You just have like a slide attack move that also has iframes and can be a dodge, or it has like a block move. That same thing. You just sort of like learn by playing the game. It's not something that tells you like, oh, press X to block. It's all just sort of like the abilities are all attacks and the attacks are abilities and they all sort of flow into each other in this really cool way. And the bosses are all really creative and cool. Just like a really excellently directed, like why I love Platinum games put into one video game. It's awesome. You should play it. As with any game on my list, but yeah, good game.
Nice. What's the combat system like? You said it had a good combat system. For people who don't know.
It is a very Platinum game style action game, where you have X is attack, Y is your heavy attack, and then you're pressing the buttons in rapid succession in different combinations to do different moves with, different weapons and stuff like that to mix things up. I definitely wouldn't say it's as good, like just the raw combat system. I don't think it's as good as something like Bayonetta or definitely not Devil May Cry. Because I don't think it has. I never necessarily feel like I'm fully in control when I'm attacking. Like there's certain combos that I know, but most of the time I'm just kind of button mashing and stuff happens and I do damage. And obviously if I played the game more, I probably would get past that point. But other action games, I think really instantly you feel like you're in control and you know exactly what you're doing. So I don't think it has quite that same level, but I think the fact that it's a Metal Gear game, like going up against, a massive Metal Gear while like rules of nature, it's like blasting your ears, and you're like just like running up its arm and like cutting it into little pieces and like doing a cool like ninja move on it. It's just it's fun seeing this universe that usually Metal Gear never takes itself too seriously, but is usually not like this edgy of just like a whoa dude type thing, and then making it exactly that, and it's just fun to be in and fun to play.
I love it.
But yeah. I think that's about it for the show this week. You can catch us every week on the weekends, either Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, so I have a little announcement on that one.
Yeah.
Just because, I guess because I was just laying that on you right before we started recording today. So for everyone watching, just so you guys know, like this episode's going to be out at the usual time. But from now on, I'm noticing I've gotten better at editing. I've been getting better at getting things ready sooner. So I could have an episode coming out as early as Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and as late as Sunday at 8 a.m., which was the normal time, right? So pretty much at any point between Saturday 8 a.m. to Sunday 8 a.m., I will have an episode of Screen Peeking coming out. I just don't want to be locked to a specific time, because sometimes there are cool, exciting announcements like this one, and I want to be having our episode come out, closer to those announcements and closer to where it's more relevant. So this one will come out at the regular time, but from now on, especially going into summer with all these major announcements that will probably end up happening, I want us to be able to publish these videos sooner. So just wanted to let everyone know, have that communication out there. Anyways, Zig, back to you, the regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, I don't think there's much scheduled programming left.
Yeah.
You can catch us on the weekends, like Nick said. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you feel like it, or a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you disliked it. And yeah, subscribe to Nick's channel. Come back next week, all that good stuff. Nick, do you have anything major you want to plug?
Yeah, just check out Ziggy's art stuff too. He has his Instagram.
Ooh, yeah, I can post in a minute.
Yeah,
but...
you don't post all the time, but you don't have to post daily. It's it's cool stuff when he does post. So yeah, definitely check him out there. And yeah, like Zig said, please leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing or what we can do to be better. And let us know what you think of our game club game, which we have not decided for this next week. Again, we always forget this until the last second. But what I was so what I wanted to suggest, and I was curious, was, is there any Bethesda game that is coming to Game Pass tomorrow that
I've never played Doom 3.
Never played Doom 3.
That's the blind spot in Doom. I played like Doom 2, I did like Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 64.
Sure, let's do Doom 3 then.
Eternal.
I haven't played it either. So,
right.
Okay, so we're going to do Doom 3. And so back to what I was saying, leave a comment if you played Doom 3 or if you're going to play it, this following week with us, and let us know like what you think of it, because we're going to be talking about it next week or a little bit, and giving our impressions, because we have not played it before. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you like this and you want to see more of it. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Till next time.
Yeah.
Keep peeking that screen.
Keep
right,
peeking
Zig?
that screen. Ooh, we said it at the same time. That was perfect.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.